Alright, welcome back again. So last time out we fitted our lip. So there she is with the lip on now. And before that we did the spoiler. So we're moving on to part 3 of our mini makeover now. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to add the side skirt extensions. So I've got these over here. Also painted out in the same, let me lift this up so you can actually see what I'm talking about. In the same satin black as our lip and our spoiler. And how these work is that they actually sit underneath the original side skirts. Let me just show you what I mean. This over here goes underneath here, and it basically gives it like a nice stepped look on the other side of the side skirt. My side skirt is super dirty. I apologize for that. We are going to clean that surface bit off in a moment. There is one slight problem though. Okay, so this looks a bit busted up, but it's no big deal. This is the jacking point. So the problem is that the side skirt actually interferes with the position of the jacking point. So what we're going to need to do is there's one over here, and then obviously there's one in the front as well. Don't know if you can see it, there it is. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take our side skirt over here and then place it along that edge, and then just measure the locations of those two jacking points. And so on this we'll have to cut out a nice little rectangle so that when this slides in it will go over that jacking point. Okay, so what we've done now is we've marked off the locations where we want to cut out for the jacking points. You'll notice that the front there we're going to cut out a little bit further in than at the back over there. And the reason for that is once this goes onto the sides over here, we want the back to have a bit more of a step, whereas the front will go in slightly, but there'll still be a step sitting right across, if that makes sense. So with regards to the width that you're going to cut, you can cut slightly wider. That really doesn't matter because it's going to go around the jacking point. What I would advise though is try to go in terms of the step inwards that you're going to do, try to make it so that this fits where you're going to push it against the jacking point. So that way this if this makes any sense, then that's going to help you keep this flush to where you actually want it on the car. So we are going to be using a jigsaw to actually cut that bit out that we need to cut. And I just want to show you the blade that we're going to be using. Okay, so the kind of blade that we're using is nice and thin. You don't want to use one that's too rough or rigid. So it's going to make it easier to slice through the flip. What am I looking for? The word size. So after we did the first cut, we tested to see how exactly this fits, and with this it fits like a glove, but it's slightly adjusted where we're going to cut here, so that's why we've got more than one point. So yeah, it's just a note that sometimes you need to readjust your adjustments. Alright, so just before we actually cut the other one and fit these, I want to show you our test fit. So you see there's a nice step out in the front, and if you look at that front tire, the fitment that we've sort of gone for is so that the step sort of fits how the offset of the tire sits outside. And similarly at the back, it's a little bit wider, especially with the slicks. So you see how the step comes out over there, and it fits how the step of the tire sits out, so it has a nice, basically it just has a really nice line, if that makes sense. Alright, so now what we're going to do is, instead of re-measuring on the other side, all we're going to do is we're going to flip this one over upside down. Where's now? Yeah, there. Over upside down, and then put it on top of the other side skirt, and then from there we can just cut it out identical, like map it out and then cut it out identically, and it should fit on the other side, given that BMW didn't mess up their own measurements. If that makes sense. Okay, so this was super funny. We cut up, like I said, we murdered them and then we just cut them up. And then only to find out that over here, in the front section, my jacking point is gone, so we didn't even need to cut one for the side. Nonetheless, because we used the jigsaw to cut the sections out, what happened was there's a bit of scratches here and there, but that's not a train smash, because what we're going to do now is we still got from that satin black spray, so we're just going to get it with the coat to cover that up, and if it doesn't blend, then we'll spray the whole thing. Otherwise we'll just touch up where it needs to be touched up, and then we'll leave that to dry and then pop them on. Okay, so at this point our skirts are actually nice and dry and ready to fit. We did run into one last little hiccup that we found a fix for. So right at the back over here, this is basically what used to be a mud flap essentially. Unfortunately it's in the way, and secondly there's a bit of plastic bit here that normally runs into what I suppose this is how the mud flap attaches to the section. So all we're going to do is, this really doesn't serve a purpose right now anymore. We're going to take a little hacksaw blade and then just slice this away so that our side skirt can fit over here, and then that should be sorted. Okay, so we've cut away the bit that we don't need, and basically we've test fitted, and our side skirts sit like exactly the way that I want it. So what we're going to do now is, because of how complex it is to actually jack up the E82 and get it really high, especially with the type of jack that we have and the stands that we have, instead of popping the stands up with them high enough to hold the car for us to actually get the screwdriver under, all we're going to do is the side where we are busy, we're going to jack that side up and then just screw. So before people get on our heads about safety with using a jack and having it rest on a jack, we're not doing very heavy work, number one, and yeah, it's not because we want to do it that way, it's just that right now that's the only available option to us. Alright, so we finished off with part 3 now. I am a bit flustered. It's actually of the spoiler and the lip and the side skirts. The side skirts, which I thought was going to be the simplest, was actually one of the trickiest to fit because of having to cut out for the jacking points, and also it's quite thick, so we had to first make a pilot hole into it every time we wanted to put a screw. In fact, it's so thick that near the end we actually lost, let me just see if I can find this, our drill bit. So we had to go with just using the electric screwdriver, and that sort of worked out. It was just a bit tougher, but yeah, let's have a look at what it looks like. Small piece of plastic, big difference to the end, and we get it for you from the other side where there's more light. So there you get to see it sort of just rounds everything off nicely, and it really makes it match up with the lip in front as well as the spoiler at the back, and I think this is pretty damn awesome. So yeah, there's just one last thing to do, and that will be the wheels, and then we'll see how everything sits once that's all done.